What's going on, good people? This video will be a coding challenge video. The challenge is actually a little bit more difficult than what I'm used to. This particular challenge is to create a Hangman game. And as you see here, there is some criteria of the to-do items and pretty much what the objective is on how to build out this game. This core example starts off with Python, but of course, like in convention, we will do this in C# using .NET Core. Let's get into it. All right, I have Visual Studio Code already pulled up, and all of the existing or prior coding challenges are available on GitHub in a repo called Coding Challenge. A link will be provided to that repository. To get started, we're going to create a .NET Core console application, and I'm going to name it Hangman. No sense in overcomplicating the name. And once that project is created, I'm going to go into the Hangman directory and do .NET Core git ignore. And that's going to create a git ignore file. Oh, sorry, forgot the new keyword. So it's .NET new core, .NET new git ignore. Messed that up too. All right. Let's try this one more time. .NET new git ignore. All right, there we go. So next, I'm going to open the repository, or excuse me, open the project, and I'm going to create the program CS, open the program CS file, and then we're going to remove this statement as well as update the namespace to my personal convention. You can update the namespace to your particular convention if you have one for your applications. And while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and let Visual Studio Code build out the necessary files to build and launch the application. All right, next thing up is we're going to take the word list that is provided in the example code over here, and we're going to type it in here. Let's see if we can get both of these. Yeah, that works. All right, and the word list is an array. Now, mind you, this is in Python. So I'm going to stick with an array with this, but I'm going to name the variables according to the C# syntax. So we got aardvark, got baboon, got camel, and that will be the end of that. And then we have our to-do one, which randomly choose a word from the word list and assign it to a variable. Let's see if we can stretch this out a little bit more. Assign it to a variable called chosen word. All right, to do two says to ask the user to guess a letter and assign their answer to a variable called guess, and that probably should be in quotation marks. Make guess, I think that's the non-quotation mark version of it, lowercase. And to do number 3 says to check if the letter the user guessed with the guess in parentheses is one of the letters in the chosen word. All right. So a little bit complex, a lot of comparisons that will have to be done to make this doable. I'm I'm gonna go ahead and make this wrap so I don't have that horizontal scroll bar, and that should be it. Okay. We'll do format and we'll trim any trailing spaces before we get started. That being said, we need to randomly choose a word from chosen word. So we're going to create a random object. And using the random class, we will place that there. And then we need to get a random, and I misspelled answer here. We will need to get one of these three words at random from the list. So we will call a integer or define a integer word list int. I think we'll stick with that name. May not be the best name for it, but we'll stick with it. And we'll do a random.next with 0 being the lowest number and the max being word list dot, I believe it's length. Yes. All right, and so that makes sure that this here will ensure that the word list dot length, that is, will ensure that we are not getting a word that is outside of the index of the array that is defined up here on line 9. Next, we need to assign the word to a variable called chosen word. So create a string called chosen word and set it equal to word list with word list int in braces, and that will get aardvark baboon, and I misspelled baboon. Baboon isn't, I don't believe is a word, but it might be. Aardvark baboon and camel will be placed into the chosen word item. All right, task number 2 is to ask the user to guess a letter and assign their answer to a variable called guess, make guess lowercase. So we're going to do a string of input is equal to console.readline, and we're going to check that to lower, and we're going to appear console.writeline and set this to enter a letter. There we go. All right, and make it lowercase. So we've done that, and the variable needs to go into, actually it needs to go into guess instead of into a input. And since it does say one letter, what we could do is actually use a char called guess, and because char will only hold one letter or number or character, and so that will minimize and make this a little bit easier to manage to get. So it does not like that, so we may have to take this 2 lower out. So let's go ahead and do that there, and then really, okay. So well, maybe not, since it does not like that being done that way, unless I can convert this read line to a char, which I do not believe it is possible. I can do a char array and then get the first item out of that array. So I may do that instead. Yeah, so we get the char array, and then we'll put that into a char open close, and then that'll be called guess. That should be sufficient. And then for each var guess letter, we're going to guess letter in guess, we're going to do, and actually that may not be the right way to do that. So we'll do for int I equals 0, I less than guess dot length I plus plus, technically you should only be accepting one letter in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take whatever the user types in, but then what I'm gonna do is actually only handle or process the first character that's in the full input. So if they type 50 characters, I'm only going to count the first one, and that will prevent it from trying to compare a lot at once, or having too many values trying to come through at once. All right, so we want the first item out, and so we want to set we also want to change this to lowercase because that's the other thing that we have to do with this. So guess I equals um, guess I dot two, doesn't have a two lowercase on here, which is I believe is because the lowercase only applies to a string. And so what may have to do is to temporarily convert this to a string, then make it lowercase, then set it back to a char. Um, so we'll create a string temp for now, and then do temp equals temp dot to lower. There we go. And then we will set the, oh, and also need to convert this dot to string. And then let's see, can we do guess I is equal to temp? I may have to do convert on this one dot char to char. Yeah. And no, it's not what I want. Convert dot char. Oh, I had to convert the so temp dot string array to string to char array. I'm sorry. All right, so now that we've converted everything back from upper to lower, we can convert it back to a char array. And this may not actually need to be done this way. Because we're trying to do a single char to a whole thing. That may be a problem. So I need to do a let's do a char array that is actually, so if I read this and then do temp plus equals, no, that resets every time, so that's not going to work. All right, so I need a temp string outside of this. Yes. So we'll do temp there, do a temporary thing here, set that to no value, actually set that to an empty string to start with, and then yes, I to toString equals temp plus equals temp. And no, actually I need to change that to a lower and then add it to the variable. And then outside of that, do temp to back to guess and handle that. And so essentially this for loop will loop over every item in the array, in the character or the guess array, and from that change all of the values to lowercase equivalents, and then turn around and put that into the char array. I'm thinking that's probably the best route to do this. May actually want to change this up though, to be honest, because it probably doesn't need to be a char array. It probably just needs to be just getting the first one. So if we get the first item out of here and put that in, then we won't need to convert everything. We just need to convert the 0 index assuming that the zero index is, well, assuming that there's something that has been typed in, because if there's nothing that's been typed in, then that doesn't matter. Um, so we can just do that instead of looping through the entire list of items. So we'll do a string temp. Let's move this here and try to adjust the indents. Better yet, I'm thinking, well, since we're only supposed to store the guess in that variable name guess, what I'm gonna do is leave that there. So we'll call this a char. I can't change a char to a char array. So we'll change it to a string for the guess and no. So we'll call this input. Then we'll do input of 0 is assigned to the string guess. And then from here, guess equals guess dot to lower. And we can do away with that. Now, that seems to be a little bit more simplified for what we're trying to do. All right, so now that we have the first character out of our string, we actually probably want to check to make sure that the string is actually has a value here. So want to do input dot length is greater, well, yeah, greater than 0. Then we want to do the stuff inside the if condition. Otherwise, when you go to run this and the length is equal to 0, then it will throw an exception for an index out of bounds. And so obviously knowing that, you don't want to code that in. All right, so that should do that particular part. All right, so the to-do for number 3 is to check if the user guessed is one of the letters in the chosen word. So to do that, we'll do if chosen word dot contains and guess, okay. And actually guess needs to come outside of this if statement. So we'll do string guess equals to an empty string. And so if that contains, then console write line, the letter you guess is contained in the word. All right, and obviously there's some more logic that needs to go in here. But I'm just putting these statements here for now so that we know what should go in each of these statements. The letter, and then I can do the replacement string here is not contained in the word, and then we'll do guess as that value. Then we'll come back up here, guess, and letter. Oops, there we go. Is contained in the word. Got it. All right, so now that we have this existing logic, well, this logic in place, what we want to do is to go ahead and build it and make sure that what we have is running thus far, and also that it will build thus far. What you will know, though, is that this will not repeat once I put a letter in. So if I type a letter, we'll do a capital P. And for some reason, I have issues with this working in Visual Studio Code. So let me open a terminal and run this application. All right, so want to do .NET run from here, and it should present the same information of asking for a letter to be entered. I'm gonna do an uppercase P, and it says the letter P is not contained in the word. We do not know which word that it picked, so we probably want to add that piece of information to the output as well as the application that we're running, because that's not also being output. So we'll say welcome to Hangman. It'll be a capital H. And we want to say, all right, so we have the chosen word, so we can do console.writeLine and say that the word has, and we'll do replacement there, characters. And with that, we'll do chosen word dot length for the substitution value. So now if we come back over to our terminal and run this again, before enter a letter shows up on the screen, it should say the word that we're looking for. And so given that we only have 3 words, it's pretty obvious which word that we're looking for. And so the last time we typed P and we confirmed that P was not in the word, whichever word it was. But this time we actually know what word it was, which word it is, because we can see the words. And so we can type a letter in here. We'll go ahead and type A. And actually I'm going to type uppercase A just to make sure that the lowercase comparison is doing correctly. And so the letter A is contained in the word. And as you see, it also dropped the lowercase, or got the lowercase equivalent of that. So that is working. I did notice that the punctuation was missing. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in right now while I see it. All right, now we need this to continue to loop over instead of exiting like it's currently doing. So what I'm going to do is to include a while loop, and I'm going to wrap that while loop around this to do. And for starters, I'm going to just default it to true just so that the error messages go away, but I'm actually going to fix that here shortly so that it only actually is a legit while loop condition. And so what we need to do is that we need to, normally in Hangman, you have a number of tries. So to do this number of tries, you need to find a variable that does the number of tries or counts the number of tries. So we're going to call it int tries. Spelling is, yeah, we'll call it int tries, and or guess attempts would probably be more appropriate. And we're going to initialize that to 7. And then so while guess attempts is greater than 0, because once you hit 0, then you're out. And we want to see that if the guess is not, if the word is not correct, then we want to remove the guess, remove one of the guess attempts. Okay, so since we also have the guess attempts, we'll want to print the number of guesses remaining to the screen. So we'll do console.writeLine, remaining attempts, and we'll do the placement of the variable in there. And semicolon. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and rename this to remaining attempts, because it seems I'm trying to get away from using the same variable, because we already have guess as a variable down here. So when it comes to typing, you'll try to make your variables fairly distinct. That way, if you have, for example, if you have string guess 2, well, when you go to type somewhere down here, guess is going to it's going to use the IntelliSense, and IntelliSense is going to throw whichever one it thinks you might be trying to type, which in most scenarios for me doesn't necessarily make it to the correct one. So I'm going to rename that for that reason. All right, now if we um, come over here and run this, and it will build. All right, so we have all of our information. Welcome to Hangman. The word has 6 characters, and enter a letter. So we have, let's say we're looking for a T. The letter T is not contained in the word, and as we also see, the remaining attempts has dropped down by 1 to 6. And if we keep doing this, and if you don't put anything in there, the remaining attempts remains the same, which is what we want. Letters not contained in the word, and if we exit the loop, we need to put a condition there that checks to see what happens after we exit the loop. Because there should be 2 conditions where you exit the loop. If you run out of attempts or if you get the word correct. So right now we're working on the attempts portion. All right, so if remaining attempts is equal to 0, then we want to console.writeLine. You have ran out of attempts, you lose. And I know that's kind of a crude error. That's a crude message, but that's essentially what has happened. All right, that being said, the next part we can work on is actually doing the comparisons for if the guess is contained in the word. So how do we do that? So we need to get the we need to also be able to display the word too, which is a little bit complex. But I'm thinking we probably need to do the display in a separate function. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build it out within this if condition, and then take that statement once it's built out in the if condition and move it over to a function where that would make sense. And so I'm gonna go ahead and move this over to a function as well. So we're going to extract I believe it's extract method. And so that will take that to a separate method and pass that in. And so if we come back up here and say exit game as the name of the function, and we'll put all of the stuff that needs to be printed out to the screen inside of this exit game function, and therefore you get a more concise loop or main. We'll continue that a little bit further, and then we could also leverage some class variables here too, because we're using this function instead of passing these arguments in. So what I'm going to do is actually make this remaining attempt into a, if it'll let me do a it's not a constant. Well, one, move it near the reference because it doesn't make sense that it's that far up. All right, now let's see if it'll let me do a, not letting me do it, so I'm just gonna have to force my way to do it. So we're going to declare a static variable with that in it. All right, and therefore, if I have a static variable, I do not need to pass the value in because the function, the variable is, because it's in the class, it now knows what it is, and so I don't have to do that. But that also means any function outside of the main can modify this value, which may or may not be a good thing depending on how you're writing your code, but it's fine in this case. All right, so now that we have our remaining temps configured correctly, the next step is to handle the correct guesses. So we have it checking that if the letter is there, then that is correct. So we need to do a comparison of we also need to track the letters that we already have guessed. So let's do a want to declare another I think I want to declare another string array that says already guessed letters. And actually, no, that can't be an array. So it would have to be a list. And the reason being that it would have to be a list is because that if it is an array, that array will not hold the values in place. So what I need to do is to do list of, not word list, string, and we'll call it already guessed letters equals new list of string. And we need to import a collection statement there for that, which is system.collections.generic. And let's see what else. All right, so we have that. And so we want to, anytime we type a letter in, we want to add that to the list of already guessed letters. So we're going to do already guessed letters dot add, and we want to add after we drop it to the lowercase or convert it to lowercase. Then we want to add it to guess, or add guess to it. Excuse me. All right, and let's see. So that is correct. One other thing that I noticed that I probably want to go ahead and make it a little bit more difficult to make this a problem in the future is, so the word list is already lowercase, but let's say somebody comes up in here and types a capital A in here instead. Well, then we still want it to remain lowercase. So I'm going to do dot to lower on this setting of the word to chosen word. That way that ensures that even if somebody does type a uppercase letter here, that it is handled properly. All right, so we're adding our already guessed letters to the list, and then we need to do a comparison of the already guessed letters versus the not already guessed letters. What I'm thinking. So let me change this back for the sake of the way it should have been. And already guessed letters. So I think we need to do a for loop on, you probably also need a variable up here that is a string that is called visible letters. And we'll set that to that. And then we want to set the visible letters equal to, wait, I want to do a for each var letter in actually no, yeah, so for each in chosen word, we want to set visible letters plus equals to star, and that will be our masking of the letters. Trying to think, is that the correct? That may or may not be the correct way to do it, but this is one way that you can do this. What I'm thinking is we may just need to cycle through each of the letters, and if the letter has not already been guessed, then that letter is replaced in the output before it is displayed to the screen, and that way we know which letter. We don't have to keep track of the word in multiple. Well, we may still need to do it in multiple variables, but it won't be as difficult. All right, so let's see. So for each letter in chosen word, or for each yeah, so for each letter in already guessed, trying to see. So we want to start with the letters that are already visible, and we'll create a temporary string that will set. So we'll do a call a string display word, set that to empty, and then for each letter in chosen word, we will do a comparison. So if letter is equal to letter, let me see, no, if, I'm trying to think, already guessed letters dot contains and then letter, then and we'll make that an if statement. If already guessed letters contains letter with the letter passed in, is that correct? Then we will add letter to the output. So we'll call this or display. So display word plus equals letter. And if it does not, else we'll do display word plus equals asterisk. And I think that's the proper way of doing that. What is wrong with this letter? Cannot convert char to string. Got it. So convert that to string with the parentheses. That should handle that. All right, and so let's see what this does. I want to remove this for the time being because I know I'm not going to need it. And we'll come back over to our terminal window, do clear, and then do .NET run. All right, the variable visible letters is never used. Okay, that's fine. I noticed I misspelled it too, so we'll comment that out for the time being as well. All right, so our our word has 8 letters. We will have 7 attempts. Enter a letter. So let's do an O. All right, so O is not included in the word. 6 remaining attempts. Now I noticed something that the display is not printing out, which it should be. So that is a problem. So let's move the display word. The display word needs to be reset every time. It also needs to be visible where it can be found. So display word contains guess. And as I'm looking at this, I think I actually have the same condition in here more than I should. Because the same function is going to be called in either scenario. And I need the display word to be kept in between cycles. So we'll do display word. And I need another console write line because what I want to have happen is, see how these are all crammed up right next to each other? I don't want that to happen. So what I'm gonna do is to, after each attempt, so remaining attempts is 6. Remaining attempts. So I'm gonna add another console.writeLine and just put a blank line there. Actually, I don't even need the quotes there. Just do it empty, and that should do the same thing. All right. Now you could do all kinds of other kind of formatting, like separating it with equals or not. I'm keeping it simple, so blank line will do in this particular case. All right, so now that we have guess letters, so if chosen word contains guess, then and we may need to change this logic altogether. We may rather need to do it this way instead of the other way. But I'll leave it there for now. All right, so we need to reset display word each time we come through and guess the right thing. So what I'm gonna do is do display word is equal to empty string. Because if you keep appending to it, then it won't be pretty after the second go round. And at the end of the loop, need to do console dot right line and display word. And that should be that. All right, so let's try this again. Clear the terminal, run the application, and let it build. So now we have our space there. So let's go ahead and type an O. All right, so the letter O is not contained in the word. Got it. So let's type an A. It's still not printing the actual word, so that is a problem. Because it should be still displaying the actual word. So we may need to copy this here and put this there. All right. So let's exit and try that run again. Oops. Clear screen. Let's run again. Let's put the letter O. All right, so now we're getting our word here. So let's put the letter A and see what happens. All right, so we got the letter A, and our attempts remain the same. So that's correct. So we put the letter D. So we got our D. What is it? Aardvark. So it's an R. So we got our R, and then we got a K and a V, and we've spelled our word. Now, only thing is, our display word is the same as the actual contained word, but we don't have a condition in our loop that would exit out. That being said, so we need to do if remaining attempts is greater than 0 and if display word is not equal to not chosen, yeah, chosen word. I believe this is the correct way of doing this. And then so if remaining attempts is equal to 0, and then I want to put another statement here and have it say, it could be an else statement here, but I'm gonna do it this way. If display, and I don't have display word there, so I probably will use an else statement here just to simplify this. So if you're exiting the game, that means you've done one or two things. You've either gotten it wrong or you've gotten it right. Right line, so you have won the game. And say you have, yeah, you have won the game. That should be sufficient. All right, so coming back over here, let's do a clear .NET run. And hopefully this time, get it right. So our 6-letter word in our example is baboon. So we can put a capital T in here for the sake of it. And the letter T is not contained in the word. Now, one thing we did not test, but it should still work, is if we put a number or a special character. And I know you can't make letters and numbers out of special characters, and there is a way to check that and make that possible. But for the sake of this, we are not going to add that logic. We pretty much figure out if you put something in here that you shouldn't put in, it's not going to work or it will be wrong. So I put a pound sign in here and the letter pound. Granted, that's not a letter. So we may need to change that output statement. Is not contained in a word. So now that we have that there, and I'm noticing something here, is the original word has 6 asterisks here. Now this word has 6 plus 6, which is 12. So the condition to if your word is wrong is not doing something correct. Now I believe it's because it's not resetting the display word here. So we needed to reset the display word regardless of where it's at. So we need to move it up to here instead. And I'm going to comment that out for the time being. And then this here really needs to be a function because it is the same logic for both statements. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that now. Do control dot and do extract method. And so we're going to call this method check display. I guess we call it not check display. Let's see, process display word. All right, and I know that's a mouthful, but essentially that is what it's doing. And so since this is the same as this down here, I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste that there, format and trim, and then save. And so if we go back to our terminal and we'll try to run this again and make sure that that is correct. All right, so we have a 5-letter word. And a 5-letter word in this example is camel. So camel does not have an R in it. So if we type R, we get our 5 asterisks, which we should still have, and then also have 1 less remaining attempt. Camel does have an M, and we'll put an uppercase M in here for the sake of it. It still should pass, and it does. And we still have 6 remaining. C, A. Let's do Q for the sake of just because. And E, L, camel. So we have gotten the word and we have won the game. Now, if you want to, you can take this a little bit further and actually do the drawing of the hangman part. I mentioned that earlier, but I probably won't do that on this particular video because of the fact of drawing characters or ASCII characters does take a little bit of effort. So let's walk back through the code one more time before we close out the video. All right, so we have our welcome to Hangman opening here. We have our word list. This word list can be longer. Just add more animals. So dog, you got to do it in quotation marks. Dog, elephant, ferret, EFG. So giraffe. There we go. All right, so we have 1 letter for the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 letters of the alphabet. That should be sufficient. And then we did our to do one, which is randomly choose a word from the list and assign it to a variable called chosen word. So that's what we've done with these 4 lines here. We've had to add some additional variables here because of the fact we need to have those for our while loop. And we also added the remaining attempts so that you know how many times you have remaining before you lose the game. And then enter a letter, so we need that information to prompt to the user for them to do something. Then you take that guess and process it accordingly, get the first letter out of there. If they put multiple characters in there, it is possible you could handle that, but for the sake of simplicity in this example, we're only going to handle that by grabbing the first letter out of that string. And do already guessed letters with add. And I actually, come to think of it, I may actually have made a mistake. I realized this condition may actually take an error message. I mean, excuse me, a blank string and decrement the steps or decrement the remaining attempts, but we'll have to test that again. So already guessed letters, you add that to the letters that have been guessed, and then if the word is chosen contains the guess, then that letter is contained in the word, and we will process the display word. And so that is a number of arguments that are passed in, and you loop over each letter in the chosen word and to see if that's there. And so if it is there, you display that letter. If not, you show an asterisk in its place and then return this back to the caller. And then inside of that, that would be it. If you were doing this same set of stuff inside of the else condition, you would decrement the remaining attempts and you would display the word regardless of, asterisk letter combinations or just asterisk only. Once you get done with the while loop, you will exit the game, and that exit game comes down here and it determines whether you had 0 remaining attempts. And if you did have 0 remaining attempts, that means you ran out of attempts and you have lost the game. If you have remaining attempts, that means you have won the game. And one thing we probably want to also do here is do a console.writeLine and say the word was, and then print out what the word was. So, because usually if you lose, you find out what the word is. And so what we want to do is we'll probably have to set chosen word as, so I set that one as a class variable. Don't know if I want to do that. Well, I'll go ahead and pass that in here as a class variable. So string the word is what I'll call this one here. Whoop, wrong function. All right, so that there. So therefore, if you run out of attempts, you do still find out what the word is. And so now that we made that one adjustment, let's do a .NET run one final time. So we have a seven character word and 7 remaining attempts. So to enter a letter, we're going to we'll put an H in there. The letter H is not contained in the word. So most of the words, if not mistaken, all of the words, well, most of the words have the letter A. So we can put the letter A in there. All right, so the letter A is in the word. And I think I know what the word is based off what I've already entered. Letter G, I, R, A, F. And there's 2 of those. And we're going to intentionally run out of letters, even though we're so close. And I kind of noticed something that, well, that's working correctly. So if you put the same letter in twice, as you see here, I have A and I already had A in the previous go round. It does not count off against your attempts because that letter already existed. So that's something to keep in mind. Normally, if you already guess a letter that's already been guessed, then you have a output that says that letter has already been guessed. And that logic can be added in here too as a if condition. All right, so continuing on, let's finish out so that we run out of attempts. And just got to make sure I type letters. All right, so here we have it. You have ran out of attempts. You lose. The word was giraffe. And as you can kind of figure out, that's kind of what it was based off the other guesses. So that wraps that up for this video. This video took a little bit longer than the previous coding sessions. All of the coding sessions won't necessarily be quick, but yeah, this one, hopefully you have learned a little bit. I know there are some video tutorials on, hey, this can be done in 10 minutes. And more than likely, those 10-minute videos are because of the fact they've already practiced it a number of times and they're just regurgitating that on video to have it done in a concise manner. As you can see, it took a decent amount of time and a lot of walking it through to get it to do what it needs to do. So while you see those tutorials that may say, I can do this in 5 minutes, I can do it in 10 minutes, in actuality, they probably practice it 2 or 3 times beforehand and then was able to go back and record it in the 5 to 10 minutes that you actually ended up seeing. So Any questions, drop those in the comments. This will probably not be the last of the coding challenges that I face and want to share with you. So any questions, comments, the repository information will be provided so you can look at the source code for this. Till next time, peace out.